Hey guys, it's Kate, and I hope you're having a great day. I've got my Scampy cat girl right here, so she may come into the frame at some point. Right now, she seems pretty content just to watch the painting. But I thought we would do some watercolor pumpkins today. All right, bye, girl. She's off. So I thought I would do some watercolor pumpkins today. I recently did a art journal with a pumpkin, so I pre-sketched some very simple pumpkins in pencil. So I'm just going to give you a close-up here. And these are really easy to do. So I'm just going to grab a quick scrap paper so that I can show you better. But basically, the easiest way, I think, to do a pumpkin is you start off with your size. So let's say I want the top to be right about there and the bottom to be right about there. You start with your first oval. And I'm just doing a quick sketch, but it'll look like that. And then you can start building it out basically with these little C shapes and add your lumps in at the bottom so you have a little bit of that texture there. And you basically just keep going around like that. And the wonderful thing about pumpkins is they come in a ton of different shapes and sizes. So you have those ones that are really long and tall and the short little fat ones, and you can really play around with your shapes. And I tried to do a little bit of that here. I've got some sort of taller ones, and then I've got kind of a squat pumpkin right here in the center. So now that my sketch is in, I'm using my Mei Liang palette today, and I'm actually going to do some sort of bluish pumpkins. And I thought that might be fun because we always do the orange pumpkins and a lot of stuff. So it'll make it a little bit different, and we'll just have some fun with some color. So I am using 3 brushes today. I've got my sort of fat quill brush, a small quill, and I've got a liner brush for some detail work. If you don't have a liner brush, you can use just a really small round, but anything that will help you get a nice fine point to do some detail. So right now I have a dry paper, and I'm going to take my larger quill brush and get it wet with some water, and I am going to start working on this first pumpkin here to the left. So I'm going to just add some water and start working wet and wet today. Now I'm going to follow the outline of my middle pumpkin to try to focus my energy kind of right here to start with. And this will give my paper a little bit of time to absorb the water and make it ready to do some wet and wet painting. Now, if you are light with your pencil sketch, you shouldn't have too much going on as far as not being able to cover it up. But a lot of painting will start with a sketch, and if you end up with some faint pencil marks, that is totally fine. And I'm not even going to be too careful about my lines today. I just want to get an even coat of water on this, and then we can start going in with some of our color. So I'm going to grab my smaller quill now that my pumpkin is kind of colored in, and I'm going to grab this light sky blue, and I'm going to mix a little bit of this out in my tray. Now I don't want to use just the plain blue. I'm actually going to get some cadmium orange here as well, and I'm going to put this to the side. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tone down this blue just a little bit, and orange is a complementary color. So I'm going to take this mixture. I rinsed my brush. I'm just going to grab a very little bit of it. And even that is too much. So this is a little bit too green, so I'm going to go back into my blue and add it. I want to get kind of a nice faint blue that I can use for the background of that pumpkin, and you can see the difference. This is a lot more toned down than the color right here straight out of the pan. So I'm going to start with this and bring it down into my pumpkin, and since I'm working wet in wet, it's going to kind of bloom out a bit, which is what I want. And I'm going to leave some marks here, some empty space, because I'm going to add some shadows and highlights. Now, one thing I should have considered is which way I want my light to come from. So I think I'm going to have my light coming from this way. So what I'm going to do is take my brush and blot back some of this color. Now, if I had kind of decided this beforehand, I wouldn't have had to do this. But that's the beauty of wet and wet. Okay, so I've got sort of a base layer there. I'm going to add some more blue to this. And I'm going to start coming up on this side to add some of those shadows in. And this will help us kind of get a little bit of color variation on our pumpkin too. So I'm going to have some shadow on the bottom and kind of working its way up. Let me grab some more blue, a little bit of that orange. And now I've got kind of a green color. I'm going to come in here with some deeper shadow. And I'm going to follow my lines here just to give that illusion of a shadow. Add some more blue back into this, just like that. Now, if you want to keep your color from spreading too much, then it's probably good to not have your brush be too wet. So the wetter your brush, the more, actually really the less control you'll have. Now, to kind of make this fun, I might do just a little hint of orange, just to kind of make it fun. And don't forget these little areas in the back. Now I'm going to go straight into this blue in the pan. I'm going to blot my brush pretty well, grab some color, and add that color in. Just like that. Now, if you wanted, you could also add a little bit of a brown. I'm going to grab the burnt brown here and get a bit on here. Maybe a little bit more moisture. And do a couple of very light splashes. Just like that. All right. Now I'm going to come over to this side and let that kind of start drying, and I might come in and just add a little bit more color and shadow, but since it's wet still, it's going to kind of spread out. So I'm just going to give that a chance to soak in and dry off. All right, so now we have the second pumpkin ready to go, and you don't have to do wet and wet. You can do wet over dry. Anything will work. So for this one, I think what I'll do is cadmium orange with a little bit of blue mixed in. So we'll do one orange pumpkin, but I'm going to tone it down a bit. So I'm grabbing some more of that blue to get kind of a dirty orange color. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to start in, and this is going to be my bright area. So I'm going to start from the bottom with this dark color, just like this. Then I'm going to rinse off quite a bit and give myself a little blot, and then I'll just bring in a little bit of color like that. And you can embrace your little areas with the color that's kind of mottled looking. It just adds a nice texture to that area, so I like that. So I'm going to come back to this center, and I might even add a little bit of brown here and kind of neutralize that a little bit more. And then I'm going to start in with some shadows. I'm going to follow these little ridges just like this. And just get a nice little coat of paint going on here. I'm going to come back into this orange and kind of liven it up a bit on this side. Just like that. And maybe I'll go right into the bright orange and add a hint of that too. I don't want to overdo it with the orange from the pan, but it adds a nice little pop. I'm just going to blot this one back just a little bit. There. All right, last but not least, let's do our little short and stubby pumpkin. Now we're going to get a little bit of bleed from this orange pumpkin to the right, but I'm actually going to be okay with that. I like this sort of loose style that you get sometimes, and this is that Bao paper, so it takes a bit to dry. It actually holds water for quite a while, but I really love that bleed action that you get, and I think what I'm going to do is do kind of something maybe in between these and maybe add a little bit more of a neutralizing blue to this orange that I've got over here, and maybe have just a little bit of almost a faded brown, but still with plenty of orange. And you can see here that that bleed that kind of comes through, it sort of blends away, and I'm just going to make sure that I keep that brightness to my left. And then I'm going to come back in. I really like that sort of bright orange that we had going on, so I'm going to come back in with some of that. And then come in with some of that blue, that sort of toned down blue. And just add it in a couple of these shadowy areas. Now I'm making all my strokes kind of go in the same direction. And I'm kind of dragging that water down instead of leaving it high. I'm going to grab a little bit of this orange and come in there. Nice. Okay, now I'm going to go back into this blue and mix it with this brown that's kind of left over on my pan. So it's kind of a gray blue, and I'm going to come back in here since it's very much dry. Not completely, but enough where I can add a little bit of a harder line. And I'm just going to sort of faintly add some outlines. And over here, I'm kind of dotting my line a little bit so that it's not just a solid line down. I'm kind of giving that idea of a shadow. And then I'm also going to kind of do some shadow in here, because this would kind of be where your light wouldn't necessarily be hitting, because it's kind of a concave sort of dip in the top of the pumpkin. All right, that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to get some more blue. And I might grab a little bit of this orange. And we'll see if this one is dark or dry enough. And I think we're good. And so I'm just going to kind of go over here. Kind of stagger my lines on this side, just giving it that hint. And then darkening up this center area. Now, same thing for this one. This one might be a little damp still, but we'll see what we can do. It might actually work. All right, excellent. Now I'm going to go into this burned brown again, and I'm just going to kind of mix it in with what we've got here. And I'm going to just drop in our little pumpkin stem. And I'm going to have this one come from this side. And we've got our 3 pumpkins started. So what I'm going to do is let this dry, and then we're going to work on the background. All right, I'm back and we are dry. So what I'm going to do is start on my table first. So I've got my brush wet again, and I'm just going to go around the outside of these pumpkins, and I sketched a bit of a line there right here across the page. So this is going to be our sort of ground for the pumpkins, and I'm just going to kind of go loosely around this area but get it pretty wet, just where I have a nice sheen on the paper. And then I'm just going to make sure that I have a decent saturation without actual pooling on the paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue using the same colors really, but just a different variety or different mixture, because I like having sort of this easy color scheme where everything kind of goes together. Now for the table, I'm going to mix this blue. I'm going to mix this blue right here. I'm going to add some of that cad orange, and I'm also going to grab some of that brown. And I'm going to add a little bit more blue to this to cool it down just a little bit. And first I'm going to start here with my shadow area under these pumpkins. And so I'm just going to kind of trace underneath and just sort of bring it out a little bit. Just like that. Now I'm going to add a little bit more blue and kind of mix it in over here to the side and get a bit of a lightish gray color. And I'm going to start dropping that in too. And I'm going to be a little bit, not too careful with where my brush is. I have a little bit of sort of brokenness here with some white spots, and I'm okay with that. Now I'm going to go back into this blue and lighten it up a bit and make it more of a pure blue over here. And then I'm going to come into this brown a bit, just like that. Then I'm going to blot my brush really well. You can see how it's flat. And I'm going to wipe up a little bit of this color here, just like that. So we have some brightness going on. And I'm going to do a little bit of that around the edge here too, and drop in a little bit more blue. Now right here, it kind of has a bit of a sudden end. So I'm just going to come back in and kind of smooth that out just a little bit so it's a little bit more of an even blend. And that will be our table. Now for the background, I am going to kind of do some rough outlines. I'm just going to kind of go carefully around these pumpkins a little bit, just like this. And here I'm not going to care so much about getting in crazy, even coat. I'm just going to make sure I get some water in every sort of region on the page. And we'll go from there. So for this one, I think I want to add a little bit of a touch of brightness. So I'm going to go into this orange, this cad orange. I'm going to use my hand and kind of cover up my pumpkins a little bit. Just like that. And that could almost be like you could imagine some fall leaves or something like that. But because I moistened my page really well, it's going to look nice as it kind of spreads out a bit. So I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of this blue. Just like that. I'm going to add a little bit of the blue to these orange pumpkins also. I love that. Okay, I have a little bit of a cauliflower down here, so I'm going to just smooth that out a bit with a very well blotted brush. And then my last thing I'm going to do is grab my liner brush right here. If you have a liner, you can, or you can grab any kind of really fine, the finest brush you have. And I'm going to come over here and start adding in those little curlies. Just like that. I'm going to have one come right down here to the pumpkin. And the liner brush just makes it really easy to do. And last but not least, and there we have it. Some lovely pumpkins. So let me hold this up so you can see the close-up. And this was a lot of fun to do. Doesn't take too long, and you can even make little variations of this for a greeting card or anything like that that you want to do. So I hope you had fun following along with me in this video. You can use whatever watercolors or palette you have on hand. You can work wet and wet, wet on dry, whatever you prefer. So I hope this gives you some ideas of some things you can do for the holidays or for autumn, which is here finally, my favorite season. So if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe. And until next time, keep creating.